Hey, Anthony. Welcome to the Intuitive Woman podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, really great. I'm so glad to have you today. And I'm excited because you're one of the very few men that I have on the podcast.
That's interesting.
So it's exciting. We have a whole new coming up with more men coming on the podcast. And I think it's just moving into different directions. So I always start with bringing us back to your childhood. So if you were brought up religious, spiritual, both, neither, take us back a little bit.
Thank you. That is an interesting question too. I never was raised religious, but I was, I grew up in an Italian household, so I would say we were holiday Catholics. And you go to church on the holidays, Easter, Christmas Eve, and whatever else there. But the interesting thing for me was that, I have two older sisters, and they went through like CCD and like the religious type things. But for me, my mom was a single mom at that time. After my sisters are older than me, so my mom was a single mom, and she went to college to go back to better herself to get a degree. There, raising three children, being a single mother. And I never went to CCD and stuff like that because my mom really didn't have the time there. And interesting enough, it's not something that, looking back now from where I am, I think it was purposely done that way. You know what I mean? Because uh, I always believed in some sort of power greater than myself, but I didn't believe in the dogma of religion, or I didn't believe in that I had to go to a specific place to pray there inside a church. You know what I mean? I felt that I could talk and this power would hear me. I believed in God, but I didn't believe in religion. That's when I was younger. I believe in religion now, and see the purpose of it there, but I don't believe within the dogma there of religion there in that way. So I was really raised non-religious, to be honest with you. I didn't, I think I was, what is it, baptized? I was baptized when I was a baby, but I never had a christening, or because I never did that stuff. So and it wasn't until my later part in life where I really started to become more spiritual, probably in my early 20s.
So it's so interesting because a lot of people that I have on the show, they're either were brought up religious and then they drop that, they drop the dogma and they turn, more spiritual, or they had, one mom that was, one religion or another religion. Because as we kind of find our ways, I find that people have a sense that there's something bigger and greater than us, but it's until we find a difficult time in our life, usually, that we kind of ask for that guidance. So I know a little bit about your story. I don't think my listeners do. They may or may not. Tell us when that changed. Like, take us a little further along when, in your teens and early 20s, and then how it was like, okay, I'm going to start grasping onto this bigger and greater concept
Yeah.
a little bit
So
more.
yes, I mean, for me, it was a big part of my story is drugs. I was addicted, drugs and alcohol, more so drugs there earlier on, from probably, well, I'm going to say it this way. The first time I ever did my first drug, I remember saying, like, I love this and I wanted more. You know what I mean? So it was like this instantaneous kind of almost like an addiction, put it that way there. And so it helped me escape reality. And so for me was going through that period of probably 16 to maybe 20 years old. At 20, I was already in my first rehab there in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I remember it. And from there, I was introduced to the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So a 12-step program. And, the steps talk about finding, I mean, the third step is, about finding a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity. You know what I mean? There, that's really the second step there. So again, that's when I needed to start to grasp that my way didn't work, but and I had to have a faith that there was another way, and in that faith, it was faith that power, but I choose to call God. You know what I mean? Because I believe in a God. I don't believe in a man in the sky, pointing, directing everyone. I believe in the energy of God. I believe in love. I believe in the universe here. So I think it was, again, because I went through such a bottom in life early on, that like woke me up. but I wasn't a first time winner either at getting sober. And so, most of my early 20s, it was like in and out of rehabs. I would have some sober time. It would come back, but all through that, again, I still had to grasp that I had to have faith in something else greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. You know what I mean? Because my life was insane. You know what I mean? It was, you know, I have, an allergy. When I would put something in my body, I would want more. You know what I mean? And so there was a phenomena of craving when it would happen. And so again, like I said, my greatest ways got me to where I was. I remember at 20, I think 21 and probably 22. I remember it was 3 years in a row. And I remember the first year I went there, I was 20. I know I wasn't 21 yet when I went to rehab. 3 years, 3 summers in a row for 4th of July, I was in rehab there because I just kept coming out and relapsing. And so every time the reason why I'm even saying that is because every time I relapsed, it brought me to my knees more there, why I needed to open myself up more, that something greater than myself can restore me there in that way. And so that's when I started to pray. That's when and again, I pray every day, you know what I mean? But I'm not religious, and it's so interesting too. Recently, I've seen this. Like sometimes I'll Google something like spiritual, or I looked up something and I'm looking for a spiritual meme there to post, and it's so funny because there always religion comes up. You know what I mean, and not actual spirituality, which is always so interesting to me. So because I pray every day, that still doesn't make me like. Some people will say, "Oh, he got religious." You know what I mean? And I'm like, "What? No, I'm not religious. I'm just spiritual. I believe in a power greater than myself. I believe in God, and therefore I pray." So it was really, again, all those times of going through, I say, I feel like I went through hell, and then, besides those first year, those first couple of years for me with rehab, I started having life experiences. I crashed a car head on into a telephone pole and there was nothing, I got out there wasn't a mark on my body. I remember the police officer in Montville, New Jersey, and it was a Sunday morning actually too. And he said, "Do you go to church?" And I said, "No." "Why, you ask?" And he said, "Because you're lucky. You're really lucky. God was with you today. That there was nothing on you." So there, and then, a little bit down the road, I was shot at by a police officer in Fairfield, New Jersey, there. And same thing. I happened to walk into a house party that was already, you know what I mean? It was about to be raided, I guess, by these police officers. And I was on the front steps and the cops came from around. It was like a scene out of the cop show. They're all in black. They didn't have police uniforms on. I'm thinking that someone's robbing the place, so I took off and started running. And as they would say, an officer's bullet was released from the chamber there. And because my head was cocked to this side instead of this way, it actually went by my head. He was so close to me that it knocked me unconscious onto the street. They gave me a powder burn and some less hearing in my right ear. But, I woke up in cuffs, two officers on me, and then they put me on the back of a police car. The whole thing was just a fiasco. But those things, that's why I was like, why am I here? Like, what is saving me? Like, why am I not dead? You know what I mean? I have a lot of friends that have crossed due to drugs, overdoses, things like that. So, those experiences kept making me more of a believer in the divine, if you want to call it that I'm here for some reason. Why am I here? But again, those still weren't enough for me. And I think I don't know if it was right after that, but maybe a couple more relapses after that. I did get sober. I got sober for 6 years and then I went out and relapsed again. And again, the reason why I'm saying that is because every time I relapsed and I went through, let's just say the last time I did, it was like a 2-year run. And so those 2 years was, I've been to hell and back. I believe that hell is not a place, you go up or you go down. I believe that, we can live in our own hell, you know what I mean? Or this world we could have our own, inner hells that we live in. And so that was it for me. And again, being dragged through the mud and really scraping by made me again become more of a believer in God, in synchronicity, in the universe, in that power there as well. And that's when I started to pray the most, is when I got sober that last time, because I just didn't understand. I really, again, like I said, I should be dead. I crashed cars. I I've been in other accidents too as well, but I went head on to a telephone pole, and I was shot at by a police officer. I was like, why am I here? What is going on? And so I started praying every day. I went back to a 12-step program, and I had friends already there because I was sober for so long there, which of course accepted me back. And that's when I really started to work on a conscious contact with my God, the God of my understanding. Let me just say that.
Yeah. So it's almost like, what is that? What is that thing they say? Like God will keep, hitting you on the head until you fall over or something. Like until you get it, it's going to keep happening. So every experience, every life experience that you had, kept bringing you back to why am I here? And that I didn't know that story. I didn't know you got shot by a cop, but I did not know that you unscathed it.
Yeah.
That's crazy with both of those.
Yes.
So when you finally, so I guess, do you ever hear the term like dark night of the soul? Have you ever
Oh
heard
yeah.
that term?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so my journey into, and I think a lot of people in general, like I said, it's getting somewhere, getting down on your knees and saying, okay, help me. Right. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be many other things. And I found my way, and I did not have that. So I can't say that I did. I came in very differently, my own
Sure.
thing, but young mom and just trying to find myself and like depressed, and then found yoga, and yoga found Reiki and all of that. But I find a lot in the yoga community. I find a lot in the healing arts, that we come to heal ourselves, right? We come to heal ourselves. We listen to that voice, within us, around us, however we do. So it's interesting that it took those times of not making it for you, right? Like not recovering and going back and relapsing, and then being like, okay, why am I here? Like, okay, show me. I mean, I guess you can look back now all in 2020 hindsight and say all these synchronicities kind of brought you to where you are today,
Yes.
right?
100%. Yeah.
Do you ever get the question, and this just popped in my head, so I'm going to go with it. Do you ever get the question though, that, because I get it, and I didn't have a past like that. It was, people would say like, wait, you're a medium? Like, when did that happen? Like you weren't, I was hanging out with you in high school, and you were kind of like normal. So do you ever get that now from people that are like, whoa, that's not the Anthony I knew. Like the Anthony I knew was like this. So how do you become the medium?
Yeah.
Like, does that come up a lot for you?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny too. I mean, let me just touch back on that real quick because that was a big fear of mine, by the way. And so, if any listeners that are practicing mediums or coming out of the closet in some way of mediumship or psychic or energy healer, whatever you are, there, and people don't know, it was funny because in the beginning I was so afraid. That was a big fear of mine because I was like, wait a minute, I'm getting sober. All these weird things are happening to me, and I'm started development as a medium, and how am I going to tell people that I see the dead or hear the dead and they're going to lock me back up? Immediately, like, he's back on drugs. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Because like I said, it was always in and out, in and out, in and out for me of sobriety. So now it's interesting too, because majority of the people have come to that understanding now. If they follow me on Facebook or I hear once in a blue moon, I have high school people still on my Facebook. Once in a blue moon, I'll get a message, about it, or, oh my God, someone was talking about your name, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe that. Like, I went to high school with him. He was just a normal kid. So yes, I get it a lot. And I always say, again, I didn't know. I didn't know. I had no idea. Like I said, I'm not someone, and that even messed with me early on in my development too, because when I would read books, these people's books, Lisa Williams or John Edward, or these other mediums that were talking about how they had these experiences when they were 4, 5, and I was like, I don't remember any of that stuff there. So for me, it wasn't into my 30s that it actually came out. So I again, when it comes, it comes. That's what my feeling is. Looking back, though, I could say now I understand why I was labeled too sensitive, or if I dated girls, they're, oh, you're too sensitive. You know what I mean? And I was like, you take that as a negative, but really I think it's a compliment now there. But looking back, I always had that sensitivity. I just didn't know what or why. And I had no idea. I didn't have strange things, visions, or hearing things, or angels, seeing anything like that there. So when I do get it now, I kind of just smirk and laugh. I mean, it was funny because unfortunately, recently I had a friend that passed right before the pandemic, and we were at the funeral here in New Jersey, and I ran into a friend of mine that I haven't seen in years, and we used to have shore houses together. Like, I was just like, people don't realize, like, I was a nightclub bartender there for a while there. That was during that 2-year relapse. I decided to, oh, let's become a bartender sober. And eventually, I started to do all that again during that time frame. But so I see my friend that I used to have shore houses with every summer down in Seaside. And it was funny because we were talking outside of the funeral, and he was looking at me all, sometimes people, when they know, they look at you weird, and they're like, they're trying to figure me out. And I'm looking at him like, what's up? And he's like, are you really doing mediumship full time? And, and all of a sudden the conversation comes up because I had a summer house with you for years, and you never really, I was like, I know, dude, I get it. Myself. I understand. It wasn't until, I got sober and I started praying and all this stuff started happening. So I think it's common. And I think it's also a place that we can, or really kind of be, what's the word I'm looking for? Authentic, authentic
Hmm.
with ourselves too, as well, and fully accept there in that way that this is who we are. It doesn't matter what you think or say about me, but yeah, this is who I am.
Right. So I guess then you would be in the belief that you can develop as a medium and a psychic, and you don't have to have been born and have visions and everything else. Like, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so I do believe that I'm going to say it this way. I do believe that mediums are born there, only because and medium, psychic, energy healers, anyone that is working with energy, I believe that we are born sensitive in some way. I do believe, or there are, there's times that people have a very traumatic experience in life, and it kind of cracks them open to to something else. People have near-death experiences, or sometimes grief, sometimes a parent loses a child there. I know people that are mediums that lost a child, and that grief kind of pushed them in that direction, but they were always sensitive in some way. It was funny. I was hiking yesterday with two friends of mine who are into it but not mediums or psychics, and both of them are very sensitive, and we started talking about it, and I said the same thing. I said, yeah, I do believe that we're born with a sense.
Mm, I just lost you. Hold on.
You
Hold on, we
froze.
froze. Yeah, hang on. 28:42. Okay. Go back to you were just talking to your friends, and
So I was talking to
yeah.
my friends hiking that they're not mediums, but they're both sensitive there. And that's what I was saying, is that when they asked me the same question yesterday, and I was saying, well, I believe that we're born with a sensitivity, right? Healers, it doesn't, that's what I'm saying. Anyone that's dealing with energy, right? There, whether that's mediumship, psychic, soul readers, Reiki practitioners, hands-on healers, you know what I mean? Any sort of person that's dealing with energy, you're born with a sensitivity. And I think it's up to us to develop that sensitivity in the ability that you're going to use it to serve humanity in some way. But I do believe that you're born with sensitive nature, you know what I mean, to
Right.
sense
Yeah.
energy and feel it in some way.
No, I like that. Because my story is I never saw a spirit. I never had shadows or dark shadows or anything like that. But when I was little, I was definitely afraid of the dark. And now I can say I felt spirit, or I just felt something was off. And it wasn't just like a normal thing. It was terrifying until I was 13, 12, 13. And I would bang on my parents' door and I'd be like, please let me sleep with you on the floor. And they were like, no. And I remember specifically, and it's not that they're bad parents by any means, they were just like, seriously? And I would sleep on the bathroom floor with the lights on, like on the bathroom rug. And I physically was afraid. I was the oldest. And I would ask my sister if I can sleep with her. And she was like, "Ugh," 2 years younger. She was like, you're such a baby. But I felt all that. And I did have some weird, but that was it. I never saw a spirit. And, I'll get that too. I do an intuitive course, a 4-week intuitive course, not a mediumship intuitive with people, but like intuitive and psychic, and really developing intuition for themselves. And I'll get people that'll say like, I see a gray shadow. What is that? I'm like, I don't really know, because it never happened to me. So
Yeah.
from my experience, and what I love about your teaching, and I love the classes that I've attended with you and mentored with you, is that you talk from experience. And I'm like, I don't really know what the dark shadow is. I could think of what I think it may be, but that wouldn't be fair to say, because, you know, it's not Hollywood too. And I also don't think that these dark shadows and there's entities that hang on you. And I used to, at some point when I started Reiki, people would say, oh my God, I have this bad energy and there's this entity on me. And now I don't believe that at all. But I think we only know from experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So you teach from
totally.
experience.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting too, because I have that when I first started, right? When I first started into my development and all this stuff started happening to me, I would say I had that same belief, you know what I mean? Like, because the woman that was like helping me to understand who I was and this ability, she was very much into the dark things and stuff like that. Like one time, I think she told me to put salt like underneath my windows to make sure on All Hallows Eve, you know what I mean, the night before Halloween, I guess, you know what I mean. And I was like, what? You know, I don't understand all that stuff. And through my own experience, and that's the interesting, again, it is through my experience over the years that has completely shifted and changed. And I don't necessarily have a belief in that, but again, I don't have the experience of going like ghost hunting and stuff like that. So I can't really comment on that. But as far as like attachments with myself and stuff like that, because I'm also a meditator, like that was one of the things that, I felt was important, or a spirit felt it was important for me to help with my mind, right? Because I have low down funky thinking at times, enough that I would want to continue to use drugs all the time there. So through my practice of meditation, and like I said, I don't meditate. I mean, I've meditated or sat for spirit, you know what I mean? Or sit in the power in that way. But I also meditate just to meditate, and find the deeper space of me. And through that, I've seen my own inner demon. And that was really scary, but I knew in the meditation, like I heard your shadow is here, you could accept it or not. And then I actually seen that inner demon, and it really wanted to take me down. And so I know where like Carl Jung talks about the shadow, the side of us that in every man or woman, that there's a part of us that doesn't want us here, and, through that experience, now I know that when I think of an attachment or someone tries to say that to me, I know it's a side of my own self, and that's my shadow. That's that other part of that fragment of that piece of my soul there that potentially I need to go and look at and work on, really, because it's coming out in some way or another.
Right. We all have that shadow work, right? That
Yep.
all that stuff. Yeah, I do. I agree. So if anyone's listening that's is an inspiring healer, developing medium, psychic, what would you say, what would be some things that helped you kind of move into the path? Because I'm a big I'll always be developing. I feel like, and that's the other thing too that I think is really strange. I really thought for so long, well, a few things, that for so long that you were born into this, you could not develop it even a little bit or more. Like it was just what it is. And so when I started realizing there was actually like development classes and things you can enhance, I'm going to say, take the tools and enhance it. So it's like you have the basis of it and you have the sensitivity. I agree with you. There's the healers, Reiki, there's some kind of sensitivity, something in your life that brought you there. But to develop it, I didn't even know that was a thing. I just thought you just, people just said, oh, I see your grandma and her name is Jane. And she's, it was like the movies to me. So when I started on the path of development, especially mediumship, so I was always doing, intuition and psychic and angel work. And of course I've done tarot and all that. I didn't even know that existed. I thought you just knew what you knew. And so when I found you, which is so synchronistic, and we'll talk about synchronicities because I think I found you through this, and then I found it, boom, boom, and your class was filled, and then I put my credit card in, it was filled, and then I tried again. I was like, oh, it took it. Okay. It was, it just amazed me and the way you taught because, and I know you had mentors too, but you teach from experience is there's a whole there's references and there's things that you can enhance on. Now, granted, you still have to take what you have. And I know we've talked about, because sometimes, and I've said it out to you, I said, after your class, I said, I'm the worst than ever because I'm trying to take all the information. But did you believe there was a development path, or did you just think that you would do this? Like once you decided like, hey, this is what I'm doing, did you realize that there was development behind it?
No, I didn't. I get, it's funny because it goes back. So let me just say this, because this came up again when you were talking. I just want to give this analogy, when we're talking about, born sensitive and stuff like that. one of the things very early on, I feel like I like spirit showed me in that sense, like anyone can pick up a basketball and go and shoot a hoop, right? So anyone can dive into mediumship classes, into psychic development there. And if not, the very least, they're still going to get out of it about learning intuition, knowing themselves better, potentially their soul, some of their stuff there in that way. If it doesn't work out for them as a medium, there it is very. I believe it's very hard. I do believe mediumship can be very tough. So I believe that anyone can. There's some people that can pick up a pen and take a piece of paper and they could draw naturally. You know what I mean? And they're just amazing at it. And then there's some people that can take classes and can get to a higher level, but they might not get to that natural state. You know what I mean? That's like bringing it back to the basketball. Anyone can pick up a basketball there. But then, even professional basketball players, they have a natural talent, right? I was just watching The Last Dance, and it's on Netflix
I
with
love
Michael.
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
with Michael Jordan. And the first episode, they showed how, in college, when he played, it was like he was great. He was still good. Don't get me wrong. But when he first came, and then year after year with the Bulls, he like did what he had to do. So that's the part of it. Like I'm saying, like he went to the gym. He constantly practiced and practiced and practiced. So I think that, there is that part of that development that kind of brings you to a greater space or a better medium, you know what I mean, to be a voice, a better voice for the spirit world there. But in the beginning for me, this first woman that I worked with, she never once said to me, I really was like, well, eventually one time I was like, well, when am I going to see them? Like I thought I had this thing that they were going to just show up in front of me, and I would see they're wearing a police uniform and their badge and potentially point to their badge number and their name on, like I had this weird concept. And the funny thing is the woman never told me that wasn't going to happen there. And hence we kind of went our separate ways there after a few months, but she did teach me, energy and how to feel energy and stuff like that. So, but I had, but then what happened for me was, at some point, someone in my family, her nephew, like my mom's cousin or something, her nephew was one of the film guys for Crossing Over with John Edward. And he gave her a copy of his newer book or one of his books, and she mailed that to me. She heard through the family that, I was on this weird path, and she mailed it to me. And so here comes a John Edward book through the mail, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to read this, And I started to read it, and it was interesting because, again, John Edward talks a lot about, there was a development process. And so I started getting answers. It was like, okay, I had these answers. This first woman that was one of my teachers, she never told me that wasn't going to happen. But when I all of a sudden this book showed up in the mail, I started reading it, and he's talking about it was a development process, how he sat, he meditated, he meditated with his guides. He learned, to work with that. He read all, back then when John was clearly developing and, X amount of, what was that, 30 years ago, probably, or 35 years ago. I think he started at 15 or 16. He said, again, there was no new age section of a bookstore. And so it was like esoteric or whatever it was. And so he would go and read those books. But that's what was like, oh, hold on. There is a development process. And John Edward wasn't born John Edward. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't born just this all knowing, he sees everything. There was a process. And, even with him, it was funny because around that same time, I had learned tarot cards, tarot. I call them tarot, the tarot cards. And interesting enough, I was, starting to do readings with tarot cards, and I didn't know that like, that's how he started. Or even John Holland, I believe too. They both were tarot card readers, and the dead started showing up. And that's really what started happening. To me, I would start to do psychic readings and then the dead would show up. But yeah, it's like anything else. It's like anything else. If I go to the gym today, I shouldn't expect to be on a cover of Muscle Fitness, in 2 weeks, but maybe with the right diet, a trainer or a coach, and maybe 2 years of lifting every day and blood, sweat, then maybe I shall get there. You know what I mean, and be on there. So I look at it like that. It's like, well, if I'm 40 pounds overweight and I go to the gym tomorrow, I go get on the treadmill one day, I'm not going to lose 40 pounds. I still got to work at that. You know what I mean? And not only do I have to do the exercise, I'm going to have to change my diet too. So it really became like a big lifestyle change. I'm not saying you have to change your diet for mediumship. Now I'm saying there's parts of life that you start to change. You know what I mean? As you start to develop more and more, because also too, I believe that your sensitivity increases. You were, yes, you were sensitive when you started, like what we were talking about, but over the years, for me, I know I've watched my sensitivity become more and more and more, and it's like weird. You know what I mean? It's like, wait, why am I getting so sensitive there in that way? So yeah, there's a huge development curve or a development path there. And it's funny, I was just saying this the other day. I posted this thing a while ago in one of the groups, and I feel like I need to repost it. But there was a guy, I don't know this kid's name. He's like in Japan or Taiwan or something, and he does these really cool kind of inspirational, spiritual, like little clips, online. And he did one about the Chinese bamboo. And the Chinese bamboo, you have to plant a seed, right? You have to plant the seed, and for 5 years, it never breaks ground. And you have to water it though every day. You have to tend to it every day. In the fifth year, when it finally breaks through, it grows like, don't quote me on this, but it grows like 60 feet in 6 weeks there. But for those first 5 years, you see nothing. You know what I mean? You see nothing happening. And that was me. So, to you answer your question too of, the people that are just starting out, or do you have any word, that was me, because I felt like nothing, even though I was, going to a development class, or I was doing practicing, and I would leave there and be like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'd call my wife, and there she'd be home sitting, and I think she was probably pregnant with our first child, and she'd be sitting there cozy by the fire, eating her ice cream, watching TV there. And I was working a regular job, and here I'd go right from my job to this class, and I'm calling her at 9:15, driving home, and, oh, how was that? I was like, oh my God, I suck. Why do I do this? I should just be home on the couch with you. There. So, there is that, it's a development process, and, don't give up, because it does take you may not see anything happening in your work for some time, but eventually it just clicks. People ask me sometimes, or people that have seen me work ask me about like my speed, or how do I get things so fast. And that's what brings me back to the Chinese bamboo, because I remember the dem that I did here in New Jersey. I was with another medium, Colby Rebel, and we did a dem, and that was the night that everything changed for me. It was just weird. It was nothing I did. My speed picked up, my accuracy was better. And it's nothing, I'm saying, it was nothing I did that night, but it was all the years prior of working at my ability,
Yep.
and developing, and sitting, and practice reading, and meditating, and whatever I had to do, you know what I mean, to get there. And I'm a firm believer, as you say too, as well as, we're never really fully developed. I'm always developing. That's what I enjoy so much when I say, like what you said about teaching by experience, is I feel like the spirit world is always teaching. Oh, to this day, I recognize patterns. I see, oh, wow, okay, you know what I mean? And I see like what spirit's trying to teach me there in that way. So, and I think they're your greatest teacher, really. So you can go and you could sit through lectures and classes, but ultimately also too, you have to be practicing it and do it.
I agree. I love that Chinese bamboo story.
Yeah.
Anything spiritual brings us back to practice. So there's a yoga practice, there's a meditation practice, there's and I get that a lot too, because I teach Reiki. And so they'll go through Reiki and they'll say, well, I don't feel anything. I said, well, think of yourself as an instrument. You're learning to feel energy, but the more you do it, the more you run your own energy, self Reiki, the more that you give Reiki, the more you're fine tuning that instrument. So I know and trust that the Reiki runs within you and you have that energy, but now you have to fine tune it. Same thing, like you said, same thing about going to the gym, and, or intuition or psychic, or all of these things are practices. I think we all want, or most people want, I want it to happen right away. We want everything to be, but I completely agree with you. I can look back on my life, and spirit has put me in different directions, and you just keep listening to spirit and keep honoring spirit. And there's
Yeah.
detours, and things change and things shift in your life. And I think people show up you just keep trusting that people show up and things show up and places show up when you need to, where spirit's going to take you. And so, I mean, we wouldn't be speaking today if I didn't listen to that, right? Call it my inner guide, call it spirit, but whatever got me to go on that YouTube channel, I think I was listening to Tony Stockwell, then I found you, then I found the international Facebook group, then I found right. And so
Yeah.
now I have a whole bunch of people and different things. And that's the beauty of it. That's the excitement, I think, of it, of staying with the practice. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me just, I just want to touch on that too, for anyone that's potentially new or newer on the journey in some way, like you said, detours. Like, there's so many times that I wanted to quit. There's so many times that, I mean, I remember, it was it was a holiday time. I worked for my father. My father was an old school machine shop, tool and die, and I was his operations manager there. And we made parts for mechanical seals for oil pumps. And I was, doing this, and I was actually I was already starting readings, and I was doing readings, and I was still working there. And I remember it was right around the holiday time. Me and my wife lived in a condo, and I was outside, and I was talking to my older sister, and she's like, "Oh, how's it going?" And I was like, "Nah, I don't think I want to do it anymore." And she was like, "Wait, what?" It's like God speaks through others, and she was like, "Wait, what?" And the funny thing is, this is my oldest sister that at that time, she was not a big believer. Like, she just supported me because I'm her younger, the baby brother, and she was going to support me. But she was like, I don't know what the hell this kid's doing there. And she was like, "Wait, what?" And I remember her, she was like, "You have an ability to help change people's life, and you're not actively pursuing that." And I was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, "Wait, what?" This is from my sister that's like skeptical there. And I was like, "Oh," so again, it's like so many times I tried to get off the train. I tried to, get off the synchronicity of the universe there. And I would look up and talk, and I thought I would go back and serve as a life coach. I went to life coaching school. I was like, forget mediumship there. I'm going to go to life coaching school and serve in that capacity, and to help people with their life because of my own life experience. And, it's funny, like, as I was in this life coaching school for a year, the money that I was paying for it, because I was paying on like a monthly plan, whatever, dried up, and I was like, I remember going outside I lived by this reservation there in New Jersey. And I remember taking my dog out one night, and I remember just stopping, and I looked up at the stars, and I started to talk to God out loud. If anyone was around me, they would thought I was crazy. And, I was like, I'm trying to better my life. I'm sober. I'm trying to serve you. I'm in life coaching. Like, how is this money? Like, how am I not being able to pay this right now? Like, this is crazy to me. And sure enough, like, I went home, I got back home and walked back home, me and my dog, and I felt drawn to go and listen to this, which is funny. This is a Christian pastor. I can get a message from like, again, it doesn't matter to me, the dogma. I could hear the message without the dogma of it. This Christian pastor that someone gave me these CDs, I put it in, and it was like God was speaking right back to me. Like, like, there's a part of this thing, like, don't you understand, when I'm ready, I could do whatever you know what I mean? Like, I'll move you in life. And I was like, what the heck? And it was like, I left the life coaching school. I was like, I guess this is the way, you know what I mean? And sure enough, here, like, maybe a week or two later, someone calls me out of the blue that doesn't know me. I had a spiritual magazine at the time. And the next thing I know, I'm bringing through this guy's brother that died in a tragic boat accident, but he was on the boat. And it was like, how, like, it was just weird. And I was like, all right, I get it. I'll get back on. I'll start the development again. And so, again, there's just so, like, people, I always say, like, when students, or sometimes when people have seen me work, and when they hear me about how many times that I want to quit, like, I don't know, I tell my wife once every 2 months, probably, I don't want to do this anymore. Now she just rolls her eyes at me. Sure. What else do you want? She gets smart now. Oh, what else do you want to do? And I'm like, oh God, I don't know. And so, but it will come. It will come. If it hasn't come yet in your development or in that process, it will come. You gotta work through it. You gotta push through it.
I love that. I love that. So I want to kind of go in a little bit of a different direction, kind of the same direction, but so you are doing what you're doing now. You love, and it seems like you love teaching. I love being in your classes. A lot of students so teaching and do mediumship readings. But is there like a new passion, or what is your message? Like, what else would you want to share with the world? Like, do you feel guided to, because we've talked about this a little off record, but what is your what is some maybe next steps or things that you're thinking about, or maybe that spirit is talking through you that you feel like you're being guided to share?
Yeah. I think, as you know, my one passion, right, is to be able to start a nonprofit, and through that, through my mediumship events and fundraising in whatever way that is, or through the gallery, again, because we're in COVID right now, so it's a little different. Not like I can't go out and do live events, really. I know we can do Zoom, but I'm not a huge fan of it. But when those things come back, maybe part of the ticket sales or whatever the case may be, to raise funds and start a nonprofit for people that have an addiction, that they have addiction issues with drugs or alcohol. I mean, there's so many addictions, but this one right now, to start with, drugs or alcohol, to help raise funds to help someone get to rehab or to pay for rehab. There was many times in my life, up to that certain age there, I was able to be on my parents, insurance, but then eventually when I became of age and I was still struggling, I didn't have that. And so, I was turned down from a rehab one time all the way down in South Jersey. Someone drove me all the way down there and they did my intake, and they sent me away. They said, my insurance, I did have insurance at that time, and the insurance didn't accept me. I wasn't bad enough. That's what they said, there. And I even lied. I even lied with some of I lied that I was, addicted to some other drugs that were more physically, addicting, cocaine and stuff like that. And they still turned me away. I drove home, like literally the person drove me back home. And thank God this other program that I've been into actually heard about that, and they took me, or someone called them and they took me. But I still was turned away, and if I didn't know better, I could have been dead or whatever else. But I think that right now in our country, we have such a major issue with health insurance. A lot of people potentially don't have it, and people can't pay for rehabs. People can't pay for treatment there. And it would be my passion to be able to raise funds to send people to, not to send people that want treatment, but cannot, want to get help, but they don't have the financial means or the insurance to get it, to help them start on their first path, to get their foot in the door, to be able to pay for a 14-day treatment, 21-day treatment, whatever the case may be, whatever that rehab or whoever's treatment center suggests for them, to be able to really fund that there for them and raise funds at. And and again, see that I see things in a different way. That to me is the work of spirit.
Mm,
I get really emotional when I start to talk about that. I think that, like, it's not just talking to the dead. It's
right.
being the representation of the spirit world, and being able to, because yes, listen, don't get me wrong. There's no other greater feeling for a parent, a medium that could provide evidence of uh, uh, a child that they lost, the husband, the father, whoever that they've lost, there, and it's wonderful. But then also, I believe that is taking that and also doing even better with it for humanity. That to me is the real work of spirit, there, in that way. So that's my next passion project. There, I'm hoping with COVID, we're able to go back again. I'm not a big Zoom gallery person. I just find it impersonal. I'll do, readings on Zoom one-on-one, but the big whole gallery thing, it just, I don't know. I'm looking forward to get back in person in there, and hopefully I'll be able to start like a 501 or something of that nature.
I love that. So it's just listening to, I love that because it's you're serving spirit in that in so many ways. And that's a way that is so dear to your heart. I can see you. I know not everyone will see you on the audio, but you got very, I could feel your heart, the
Yeah.
energy, I can feel it, and in your throat center. And it's, it's beautiful just to continue to listen to spirit. And it's not always easy, but, um, I know it will be a wonderful thing. So, and I have to believe that we will be coming back to live. I miss live events
Yeah.
also. Um, I know we've embraced Zoom, but I think it'll be really nice to come back to live. And in that, to also say that what I've noticed, especially with COVID, unfortunately, is that the mental illness and the drug addiction, alcohol, so forth, has really been challenging. So we need to hope for the best, and we need people like you to really help the people that want it. I agree with
Yeah.
that too. So you have to be a part of your care and part of your help. But so big stuff, but really exciting stuff. So
Yeah.
to look forward to.
Yep.
So before we close, and I know we've talked a lot about this kind of in a different way, but I always like to say, I always end with like an intuitive moment, right? And you probably have had so many intuitive moments, but is there something that you can think about? It could have been far off in your past or something recent that you listen to your intuition, to whatever you call your spirit, you can say God, you can say your inner compass, something recently that you listened to, that you want to share.
Oh, that's a really good one. So let me just make sure I'm getting this correctly. So like an intuitive hit for my own life that I listened
Yes.
to,
Yes.
there
Yes.
in
For
that
your own
way.
life. Hmm.
Oh God, it's always so interesting to me because I'll be honest with you, people always ask me about their life, and it's like I'm always constantly giving that, and it's not even just for readings. Like my wife sometimes, like, well, what's your feeling? Wait, let me just ask you this. My brother's got to go, or one of the kids has to go here. What's your thing? And I'm always like trying to give her like what my intuition is about it, or there. So for myself though, I don't know. Let me think about that for a second here. Oh, I can tell you, very simple. This is a simple one. Leaving, we were away in vacation a couple weeks ago. We went down to the shore for the week there with my family, and right before leaving, I was at Mavis Discount Tire there to get my brakes done, right? To get the brakes on the truck done. And when I was there, I kept feeling that for some reason that my air conditioning was something was going to happen to my air conditioning. And I said, and he's like, oh, does it get colder when you start driving faster, when you start moving? I said, well, yeah. And he's like, well, that's the heat. It's just it was like one of those 90-degree days here, He's like, it's just the heat. It's too hot. It's just whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And I really felt like I should have asked him, well, maybe could you just check it, And I didn't. And so we left. And sure enough, I guess about a week later, we were down the shore and we're getting in the car one day. We were in Wildwood and we get in the car to go to this water park and the air is dead.
And you're
Thank
like,
God
I
we were,
knew.
yeah, it was like, thank God we were right down. Like we just had, in the condo, we just had to drive a couple of blocks to the parking lot. But then I was like, oh no. So now I'm calling, we're at the water park and I'm like looking up places. Well, who's going to service my truck here? There. And thank God I went and got one of those Freon cans. I put it in. It wasn't an issue. There was an issue, but I just had to add the stuff in and it worked there. But it was like this simple. And I said to my wife, I go, I gotta listen to myself more. I said to the guy, I asked him, and I should have just said, could you guys just hook it up and check it when the car's here? And I didn't, you know what I mean? But I felt the intuition about the AC not working.
Yeah, I love that. When I teach intuition, I always say, intuition is the things for ourselves, and we can feel them. Like you're a feeler, like you said. You use the term like I felt that. Some people know it, some people feel it, some people see it, some people hear it, whatever. But more psychic is like for other people, right? Like I feel like the intuition's for
Yeah,
ourselves, but we just like forget, and then you can go, I felt that something was going to happen to the AC. I should have said something. So I love that. That's great.
yeah,
And that's exactly how it is. So I know people that are listening, it's this whole thing like, how do I develop my intuition? I'm like, you just got to record it. You got to remind it. And in the failures of it too, because my big thing is, especially with intuition, in the things that don't go your way, that you didn't listen, that's the experience that you have to remember. And I have all my students, they kind of walk around with an intuitive hits journal, I call it. So they write down everything because I think recording it's important, but I love that. So I'm glad you
yeah.
fixed your AC, but
Yeah. It's funny. I did fix it down there. Thank God it was like a temporary fix. When I did get home, I did have to take her to a place because it started getting weird again. And there was nothing wrong. The guy, they called me. I dropped off the car and they called me back like 2 hours later. Like, it's ready. I'm like, what? How'd you fix it? It's like, there's no leak. And they're like, no, you just needed the proper, you had air in your system. We had to pull it out and proper Freon, recharge. I was like, oh, okay. There. So yeah.
very cool. So before we close, where can people find you? Where can people
Definitely,
hang out with you?
definitely. Yeah, definitely my website. You know what? I say that, but I never update my website so much. But AnthonyMrocka.com is my website. On Facebook, Anthony, I think it's Psychic Medium Anthony Mrocka. Instagram's Anthony Mrocka. If you're a developing medium, I have that international mediumship development group on Facebook. They could always join, and there's stuff in there that happens. So those are really my main places.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. And I know the community is going to have very enjoyable listening. So I appreciate it. Thank you. And
Yeah,
thank you for being my mentor too, because I love learning from you.
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm
Okay.
super excited that you asked me to do this.
Awesome. Bye bye.